Following on, Mr President, with the rhetoric and many of the points that Senator Collins made are quite pertinent to the subject. But last night on the ABC's Q&A, the former Minister for Small Business in the government, Mr Bilson, said to see a person elected to the Australian Senate with 1,500 first preference votes that wouldn't even get you elected in a ward election in a local council and then hold up the trajectory of the nation, make it impossible to hold governments to account for their promises and the commitments and the outcomes they deliver to our country. I think that's not good. Having people know where their vote's going, I think that is good. So I think there's a strong case for the reforms that are being put to the parliament. So I've listened to the government repeat this time and time again, and we've often heard references made to my fellow crossbench senators and Senator Muir in particular, who at the 2013 election received 479 first preference votes below the line. Senator Muir received 479 votes in the 2013 election below the line. But then you go and have a look at the front bench of the government, and I go to look at what Senator Cash received, first preference votes below the line in the 2013 election. And Senator Cash, the Minister for Women and Minister assisting the Prime Minister for the Public Service, Minister for Employment, received 349 first preference votes below the line. Now, and then we've got Senator Edwards, who received 667 first preference votes below the line. Senator Fawcett, who received 1,602 first preference votes below the line. And of course Senator Lambie received 1,501 first preference votes below the line. Now of course it's true that many Australians vote above the line, and they vote according to the voting ticket that their party puts forward, whether it be the government, the Liberal Party, the National Party, the ALP, the Greens, PUP, whoever. So the fact of the matter is that people, the majority of people, say to their part, they put one above the line, and they say to the people say to their party, you distribute our vote according to how you, the party, sees it. And if you want to go on, if you care, if any member of the public cares to go to the Australian Electoral Commission website prior to the election, you can look up to see how the party is directing your preferences. But of course, we don't want the public to actually know. They don't want the public to actually know. This bill is about self-interest and it's about political opportunism. And I'm all for transparency so the public knows where their votes are going, and I support that. I support educating the parliament to care how they vote and who they vote for, to actually look beyond the actual tag of whether you're the ALP or the Liberals or the Nationals or the Nick Xenophon Party, but look at the individual who you're voting for and look and see if their beliefs, their ethics, conform with yours. It might be 70%, might be 100%, might be 65%, but so people understand how their vote works, because there is an incredible amount of ignorance, unfortunately, in the general community about how your votes work. Now, it's an interesting position that we've got here, the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, which, on that committee is the government, the ALP and the Greens. There's no other voting members on that committee other than them. That's a fact. And predominantly, this committee, a House of Representatives committee, has in the past, on the public record, former Prime Ministers of our nation have shown an utter contempt for the Senate and the way the Senate works. And unless the Senate votes the way a government of the day wants them to vote, you know, some people refer to the Senate as swill. So I'd say to members of the government in the Senate, be careful what you wish for. Now, often we hear in this place about legislation being rammed through this place. And the fact of the matter is that this has happened in the previous Rudd-Gillard governments. The ALP Greens coalition, for want of a better word, rammed through legislation. And at that time, the now government, the Liberal National Party, complained profusely about that. That, you know, it was an abuse of the Senate process, lack of scrutiny, lack of process, and now when the boot's on the other foot, we hear it from the now opposition, then government. Now, you know, some people suggest it's an easy thing to get into the Senate by gaming it, and if the fact of the matter is it's a vertical ski slope. For the incumbents, the cabal, as some people would say, it's all in their favour. The fact of the matter is, in 2013, there was $58,076,456 paid to political parties, both in the House, representing the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, to receive funding from the public purse, you have to get 4% or more of the vote. That already is a huge advantage to incumbency. But we don't hear about that. So I'd suggest to the government the argument that you use about how many votes people got below the line doesn't cut the mustard, let alone when you look at the fact of how many people, with the retirement of people or the resignation of people from the Senate, where we find people who didn't even run on the 2010 or the 2013 election that now occupy seats in this Senate, who never put their name on a ballot paper, but now they're here, and yet we hear about arguments about what the people want. They don't even often go to the person who actually ran on those two previous elections to see who it was that was the next person on the government's ticket, the Liberals, the Nationals, the ALP or the Greens. There's many people that end up in this place that have never faced an election, never faced the people that occupy seats in this place. You know, as Senator Dastyari, you know, you didn't run, and you'll admit that, and you were picked by the party to be here. And I'm not insinuating, Senator Dastyari, that you shouldn't be here. That's the system. That's the system that the government, the incumbents, made in this place. Here we are, 30 years on, with one of the biggest electoral changes that the nation's seen in 3 decades, and it's being rushed through. You know, you want to be careful what you wish for here. And if you actually go to have a look, if we accept the government's argument about how many votes people get below the line, it should be ringing alarm bells for the government. Because if that's going to be the yardstick, go and have a look at how many below the line first preference votes Senator Di Natale got. And one doesn't have to look too far. At the 2010 election, he got 34,208 votes below the line. Number one in the box next to Senator Di Natale. Then we go and have a look at one of the better performers for the coalition was Senator Furvanti-Wells. At the 2010 election, Senator Furvanti-Wells got 12,194 first preference votes below the line. And I have to say, she's one of the far better performers of the coalition. You know, Senator Cormann, who's got carriage of this bill, if you go to have a look at how many votes he got below the line, you got 5,215 votes in the 2010 election. Less than one-sixth of the votes that Senator Di Natale got. So the argument that you're putting forward about below-the-line vote doesn't cut the mustard. And in the paper where you attack other people for their low vote, you want to go having a look. You know, Senator Bernardi, who's attacked in this place often for his views and how outspoken he is, you know, he got 5,554 votes at the last election in 2013. Senator Birmingham, who's the Minister for Education and Training, he got 1,013 votes. He got less than I did, and yet he's a minister. But I'm not calling into question the fact that he can be a minister. Madam Acting Deputy President, this narrative about there being a problem, should we have more scrutiny? Yes, we should have more scrutiny. But the government wants to think about what it's doing here. I caution the government that it's not going to turn out the way you think ultimately. And you're playing into the hands of the Greens here and other people. One thing the ALP has always put in the House of Representatives is that, you know, one value, one vote. And I refer you to the Constitution, where the Constitution talks about people being elected by the people to the Senate to represent their states. That's what it says, not what I think it says, that's what it actually says. But the system as we've currently got it, where you vote one above the line for the, you know, your first preference, you allocate how your vote is going to be distributed to that party above the line. Whether it's the ALP, whether it's the government, the Greens, PUP or an independent or whoever, small or minor party, if you put one above the line, they all distribute your vote according to how they see fit. That's a fact. And for 32 years, I think it was 1984, this system came into play. And, you know, you were all part of, your parties were all part of putting this current system in place. And for many years, this system has served you. And prior to an election, you all come around to small, minor parties, independents, any other person who's nominating to run for the Senate, and they put up their $2,000, whatever, to pay the nomination fee, and they meet all the requirements of the AEC. The fact of the matter is, they haven't broken the law. And there are backroom deals, preference deals, done by all parties and individuals represented in this place in some way, shape or form. And the fact of the matter is that the people who choose not to vote for either the ALP, the Greens, the Nationals, the Liberals, they're entitled to have a voice. They're entitled to have their vote represented. And if somebody chooses to say that I agree with an individual more than one other individual, I'm going to give my preferences to that person, that's their right to do so. And there is a large proportion of voters who vote in the Senate who choose to vote below the line. And, you know, the Liberals might have their first candidate in Victoria being, you know, whoever it may be. But the voter might say, well, look, I don't particularly like that bloke or that woman. I'm going for the person who's number 6 on the Liberal list, and then I'm going to go to the candidate who's number 2 on the list on the ALP list, because I concur with their beliefs more than I do with the other 5 on the Liberal ticket, or vice versa on the ALP ticket. And that is people's right to do that. And many Australians take up that option to do that. And many Australians, the vast majority of Australians, just give it to the party to decide who does it. But, you know, to tell me that people care about what the voting public think is disingenuous. And the fact of the matter is this is purely about self-interest. It's purely about political opportunism. And the selective moral outrage that's and the toxic sanctimony of the Greens on this issue is just breathtaking. And the government's jumped into bed with them, and ultimately you will rue the day that you went along with this.